Hello, guys, and welcome to episode 42 of What If Civilization Started Over. In the last episode, we saw a few events happening, such as the wrapping up of two, uh, technically, proxy wars, and the beginning of a third one. Yeah, Cold. Also, the Cold War began. We also saw more nukes get added, and that was pretty much it. But anyway, let's get started with this episode because we have a lot of changes happening. Alright, so nuclear on here. Mm, Okay. I thought I just accidentally turned on the power rankings because of Ethiopia. Alright, so we see a lot more nukes get added to countries. So erasing all of that because no country is at the same amount of nukes. Alright, so we'll start off back here. We see America has now gotten 5 nukes. Why is this red? America has 5 nukes. Moving to the Great Lakes Empire, they are now at 20. They gained a whole lot, but not even the most. We see Switzerland is now at 7. The Great Lakes Empire has gotten all the way up to 28. China and Korea both are now at 4. And we also see South China gets their own nuke. Moving a bit further to, or moving out west now into Africa, there are currently 2 nations in Africa with nukes. The first one is Ethiopia, who now has 12, and the other country with nukes is actually West Africa. Despite them being lower than Ghana, they they have made one nuke. However, we are going to come back to the Great Empire real quickly because I forgot to add something. Yes, they have 28 nukes. However, they don't own all 28 nukes. In fact, 3 of their nukes are being stored in another country. They have 1 nuke here in the Adriatic Union, and their other 2 are out in Catalonia. Alright, but now we're gonna go off of that layer and back down to the map. So in the previous episode, we saw quite a lot happening over here. It was extremely chaotic, to say the least. But we ended up seeing the peace treaty. The only thing that was resolved is Texas had no claim to be a to be the true successor of the Catalonian American colony. Um, it's still all the countries are still fighting about it. Now Texas isn't though, but things are still very heated, and it makes things even worse now because they now that none of them want to go to war now that they are all in alliances. And yeah, the same is also kind of said over here, although these guys aren't in alliances. Well, these two are, but no one wants to go to war with these guys, as at this point they're very close to becoming a top 20 power. Alright, now we're gonna move over to the Sumatran country, or Malaysia, as they're, for the first time in a while, they are going to be invading a country. And, well, actually, they're not just invading one. The first country they will be invading is Thailand. Thailand was kind of getting ready to join the the Square Alliance. Clearly, they didn't in time though, as they are quickly invaded. The next country we see them invading is out here in the yellow team. We see them take over almost half the country, but before that, we see the most of the country, not all of it, but we see quite a few provinces here decide that uh, instead of fighting against a top 10 power, they're going to become independent. Well, kind of independent. They join up with the island survivors. But they are not the only ones to do so, as we also see two other countries join, being that green team right here and this giant blue team out over here. And I forgot to do this the last time a country joined, or when the red team joined. But obviously, none of them are going to have capitals. All right. But for the peace treaties, well, it's going to look a little different. So let's take a look at that. All right. So here we can take a look at our peace treaty. So for Sumatra, they will be getting these lands right here. They don't really take a whole lot out of Thailand, but they still take some very valuable lands. As now they pretty much have access to this entire bay, which could prove useful later. They also will fully annex this country, or what remains of it, and remove their capital. Alright, we see Myanmar, despite not being involved in the war at all, take or get some land out of this. The same with Vietnam. Vietnam makes a bit more sense because Vietnam and Malaysia are allied. It turns out Myanmar also has secretly joined up in the Square Alliance. So we add that into the Square Alliance. Alrighty. But we're gonna stay on the Square Alliance map as there are two countries that kind of fell apart from each other. They still have decent relations, and one of them really wants some land back. And of course, I am talking about the Great Empire and their old friend, South China. Er, But, so we see them join, but we also see another country is added to an alliance, not the Cross Alliance, but instead Diamond Alliance, and that is Central China. They're not the only ones added, though, as we see like Baikal also joins this alliance, despite them also having close ties with the Great Empire. However, those ties have seriously dwindled. Now, the only country that hasn't added another country to its alliance yet this episode is Ethiopia. But they will obviously also be adding someone. Well, they don't just add someone. Firstly, they add Thailand. This is crap. Alrighty, too far. Alrighty. So, Triangle Alliance. These guys. So they join. If you guys can hear my brother, do not pay attention to him. He's probably playing Forsaken. He keeps raging every single day, and I have to deal with it, and it sucks. Alright, so Ethiopia adding countries to their alliance. Yes, that's where we left off. We see a couple countries are added to their alliance, all of them in the same region. Firstly, we see New Zealand joins. We see this bluish purple country, and we see this other blue country join. They were also going to add the Oceanic Island nation out here, but obviously they can't do that because they joined a different thing. But we see one more country is added to the Triangle Alliance, and that is this Ghana, not really Ghana. This is like, yeah, this Ghana country. These guys are Guinean. I've been calling them Ghana. All right, but we also see a couple other things happen. We see a few countries end up leaving their current alliance. And it's definitely not because I feel like this is overcrowded. So, we come down into South America as we now see this green country leaves, this country here leaves, and this red country here leaves as well. They don't rejoin into any other alliance, but they're not the only ones that leave, as we actually see a Diamond Alliance, another Diamond Alliance member also leaves their alliance, and that is going to be England. They're kind of more pursuing peace right now and not really trying to get involved in any wars. And we see Ireland is also kind of sort of getting in on that, but they also have other plans in mind. But let's move on to our uh, the biggest event of the last episode, where we saw another proxy war kind of broke out. And we're going to continue seeing this thing evolve. So, Ethiopia will continue to invade. Oh my god. So, we see Ethiopia will continue to invade south into this country. At this point, they're sending most of their forces here, and their and the pink country's capital was captured. This does not scare them, though, as they have also pushed out very far because another country that other than the one that's currently supporting them, which I think is Switzerland, I low-key forgot my lore. Um, Great Lakes Empire's aiding these guys. These guys are being aided by Ethiopia. I think these guys are being aided by the Great Lake, no, the Great Empire. Korea. I think that's these guys are Korea, these guys are Switzerland, and these guys are just involved. No one's really aiding these guys, I think. I might be completely wrong though. But anyway, these guys are actually kind of getting aid from the Circle Alliance, just like we saw with Texas up here. However, the Circle Alliance does not do a good job at aiding their countries, and they're also they have the weakest, strongest nation, if that makes any sense, in their alliance. So you have number one in trapezoids, number two in cross, number three in the triangles, number four in the squares, and I think it's I don't know, number eight in the diamonds. And then we have number 13 in the circles. So yeah, the weakest is the circles. Alrighty, let's get back to the war though. So we see the Great Empire is sending their aid through this country again, and they push deep through. Alright, so we see we see the Great Empire sending their aid. Korea is once again slacking. Um, they may or may oh, great. They may or may not have sent their forces down into Thailand instead. But yeah. So I gotta fix this real quick because I made it. Oopsie. Alrighty. Alright. Really clear. Ethiopia is Gold Mozambique, and that is because of, well, Gold Mozambique's proximity to Ethiopia. That is really the only reason. If they had to fight this war on their own, they would easily be cooked. But they have freed their capital now, and they are pushing Tanzania back very far, getting to their border. And the Great Lakes Empire is like, Tanzania, goodbye. And they as well as the rest of the Trapezoid Alliance will take all of their aid out from here, and they move it. This time they move it into Madagascar. However, Madagascar is not really trying to get into the war. They hate all these countries, yes, but they're not in any position to fight, as they are kind of struggling internally. This country may seem to have, eh, in the region, it has decent stability, and that map is also very outdated. But taking a look at the religion map, you can see this country is very clearly split between this brighter yellow religion and the red religion that Switzerland has, and it also has because it was colonized by West France, who also follows the red religion. So we see, well, so we see them kind of starting to struggle a bit internally. If we move on to this green nation here, we see them cut off the pink team's supplies, which does mean they are able to cut that off. They and these guys, and also the orange team is right here. And a lot of the Circle Alliance members are kind of wondering, like, why isn't anyone joining us? And that's really just due to political influence. if there was no political influence, I'm sure a lot more countries would join the Circle Alliance, but just because of um, well, every, all the big countries, m- they're messing with all the small countries, and also it's there's another reason for it, and that's called I said so. All right, the gold team will once again push another country out of its borders, being the orange team, as Korea also kind of just dipped on this country. We see a lot less influencing going on in Africa, as this area, especially down here, is going to be kind of hard to control from one of these other countries because they have Ethiopia here blocking them. What if I just like switch to these guys' colors? I mean, these guys don't do what the other what the other Ethiopians did. So like, at least they aren't like that. But we see the Ethiopians are pushing into Tanzania, and eventually they'll get to the point where they meet up with the Gold Mozambique nation, and they pretty much tell Mozambique, like, yo, focus on the south, we'll aid you, and we got this covered. They move down along the border of the Orange Country, who's, like I said, directly supplying these guys. Alright, and, yeah, well, these guys end up just falling too. And now everyone is scared. So we see the Great Empire is just pumping supplies straight into this country. And with these supplies, they are able to move pretty far south into this country here. They they kind of just focus along the coast, as the Great Empire wants to cut these guys off from them, because like there's no Diamond Alliance member that's close. The closest Diamond Alliance member here is Brazil, so they'd have to get through there. Or then there's South China, but they'll probably get blocked by Korea. If not, we have Hong Kong, but this is Central China. If not, we have the Hong Kong nation here to stop them. It's like, yeah, we're good. So we see, oops. So we see the Great Empire. It's kind of sending all its forces here, but with some excess technology help, and also being the first nation, Switzerland is able to start getting its aid down into here. And they don't send their aid into this country. What they do is they send it into the occupied areas. I mean, that is a decently smart idea. But what they do is they kind of just they fund the civilians to rise up against the Green Team and the Great Empire. Mm. And this really works well. It's able to free up a lot of the country, kind of splitting the Great Empire, their plan apart. And then once the blue team moves in to connect up with these, we see a large encirclement down here that is eventually cut into two, and the green team is pushed back north. Eventually, it's kind of stalemated right here, but we do see South Africa gets a few gains through here. However, for the orange team, it goes a lot better for the blue team pushing against the green team, as we see them take over a lot of the green team's land here. They will then push against the orange team, and the Great Empire is going to refocus its plan, now beginning to invade into the orange team as well as the other three countries here. And we see Madagascar will actually make their landing now. The Great the Great Lakes Empire kind of helped settle down the rebellions, but this the pink team is still quite unstable, but they're stable enough to make landing here, and that landing is also enough to capture the rest of the coastline here. You know, I'm going a bit fast paced. There's other stuff I'm kind of I have to record 4 videos today. I don't have any time to record elsewhere, so I have to record the um 3 changes short WICSO or 3 changes WICSO short. I have to record 2 WICSO episodes, and I have to record alternate future of WICSO. So I kind of got a lot on my plate. But we see this thing right here, the spearhead there, got pretty far through, and now we see we see these countries are like this the stalemate's really starting to enact. We do see the gold team is able to do quite a bit more pushing into the green team, as well as the orange team, or well, through the green team's troops. They don't actually ever meet up with the blue team. They also push a bit through in Madagascar's troops. But Madagascar really only joined this war to kind of show they can prove themselves, and also because the Great Lakes Empire needed someone down here. It's the Trapezoid Alliance, unlike the others, doesn't have access to the Indian Ocean. Cross Alliance, go through these guys. Triangle Alliance, they have direct access all over. Same thing with this. Same with Square Alliance. The Diamond Alliance, they don't really have direct access. They can go through these guys, which is quite quick, or with Brazil. Whereas with the Great Lakes Empire, they have all of their allies are in the Americas, so they have to go. They have to go a while. But we see the peace treaty for this war will finally be drafted, but we won't take a look at that in this episode. Instead, we will take a look at one more event that happens, and that is more countries are joining this tribal thing. We see the red team joins it, and with that, they remove their capital. And we see this thing is countries around are kind of scared of this thing, and it's getting decently strong. But our actual that was the last map event. Our actual last event of the episode is going to be power rankings. So let's take a look at these. Maybe. Alrighty. Let's take a look at power rankings. Alright. So we're gonna start off, just like always, with number 1. And that is still the Great Lakes Empire. Number 2 is still the Great Empire. And these are, if you're wondering why this tiny green country is not really tiny, this smaller green country is just as strong, is stronger than this country. Well, that is because this also includes economy and stability, just military. Military wise, the Great Empire far outranks these guys. Economy wise, also decently outranks, although it's much closer there. However, in stability, the Great Lakes Empire is much more stable. despite having a dictatorship. But for number 3, we're still we're still seeing the Ethiopians down there. Number 4 is still the Koreans. In number 5, we still see the Americans here. Number 6 is still China. Number 7 we now see is Switzerland. Number 8 we go down to Sumatra for. In number 9 we have Russia. In 10th place we hint. 10th place we give over to Catalonia. 11th is down in Myanmar. 12th we see goes over to the Adriatic Union. 13th is the Nordic Union. In 14th place we see is Ghana again, or Guinea. In 15th we see Portugal. 16th goes to West France. 17th is Gibraltar. 18th is the Galicians. 19th goes to Mexico, which I didn't erase, but they say they stayed the same spot, so it's okay. And in 20th, we see it going over to Red Australia. Alright, but that will do it for today's episode of What If Civilization Started Over. If you enjoyed, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.